Okay, I think I'll go ahead now. So to begin with, my name is Ahmed Kamil. I'm a sophomore in the Huntsman program for International Studies and Business, focusing on finance and mathematics. I'm originally from Sudan, but I moved here to the United States when I was about 2 years old, and ever since then I've been living in Greenbelt, Maryland, which is a suburb of DC. I have two younger brothers, and they're both in high school right now. Um, So, just to begin with, this webinar is also being recorded, so you could stop and play it back at any point or wait till afterwards and play it back. And now I'll just start with a committee overview. So the first topic is police response to violence, and I really think this is an interesting topic, not only because of its relevance in the United States right now, but because of its lack of reporting outside of the United States. A lot of times people bring attention to what's occurring right now in the United States with police brutality and over excessive force. However, these are also problems that plague other countries daily, and the fact that the United States is reported much more on than other countries, I don't think is exactly accurate. So I'm really excited for this topic in this committee. Um, Specifically, what I'm looking forward to talking in this committee is the condemnation of the use of excessive force, first and foremost. Then I really want to go into protecting the right of citizens. I want delegates to speak about what happens in the respective countries and what they're moving towards in terms of objectives and ideas and formation of blocks. Next, I would like people to also talk about protecting the police and preventing the endangerment of police, because not only are citizens the victims of this, but a lot of the time, police don't actively want to hurt people. They're only doing their job and they're acting out of self protection. So that's really something you have to take into consideration when approaching this problem. And finally, I want to find a good compromise between the two. So between the two, I mean between protecting the rights of citizens and preventing the endangerment of police. So that this is a very, I think, multifaceted problem, and it would be pretty good to find a way to compromise between the two without taking from the other. And I think it should do for pretty good debate. So next, we will also be talking about drug cartels and drug trafficking organizations. I think this is also a very important topic, but because it's been going on for almost, I'd say, 150 years now on a large scale, and solutions just aren't working to the same extent that they should be. And I also feel that the wrong people are being targeted in terms of rather than trying to find out and penetrate these drug cartels. Uh, Governments are focusing on usage and small scale users rather than trying to tackle a problem from a much bigger perspective. So to begin with, of course you have to begin with the condemnation of drug cartels. Um, Next, you have to consider either the decriminalization or the legalization of some drugs, which would not only free a lot of the small time abusers and not ruin as many lives on the small scale, but it will also take away the profitability from these large scale operations. Next, you have to talk about, I think, the formation of more effective task forces. Um, because as of right now, these task forces clearly just aren't as successful as they need to be. And you could get really creative with this, I think, in terms of the ways you could approach this. You can make logistical barriers, you can make all different types of obstacles, and it's honestly a game of chess because every time the United Nations um, makes some type of movement or some type of strategic operation against these drug cartels, they respond in a way that they avoid it or they work around it. So I think this should be a really interesting part of the committee. Next, I would like the delegates to talk about the elimination of corruption because corruption opens up all these doors for drug trafficking and these types of operations. Um, and finally, I'd like to see just a very well-rounded resolution that takes into consideration all of these factors that I just listed. Um, so besides the committee like overviews, I'd also like to go into some Parley Pro. This is actually the first large committee that I've chaired, so I'm thinking of sticking mostly to Parley Pro, but I'm also waiting until I get there to judge the like reactions and um, entertain the wishes of delegates. So really, I'm pretty flexible on Parley Pro. I could either be very strict or very lax, and this is just something that I'll have to feel out and we'll have to settle at the beginning of conference. And what I encourage from delegates is just really working and pushing committee forward. Oftentimes, I see delegates constantly talking in general terms, using words like comprehensive or like all encompassing, and that's really not the focus. What you want to do is be very specific and have specific like objectives and goals, and also have specific methods of you getting there, because these generalizations aren't as skilled or nuanced as like really delving into it deeply and doing that research, which leads into like the idea of position papers, which I have to remind everyone are due November 20th. For schools, that faculty advisors can upload the position papers through the back end, and individual delegates can do it directly on the website. Oh, I apologize. So, Parley Pro is just parliamentary procedure. So, it's the procedure of opening up debate, establishing like quorum, um, like running through a speakers list, and then the different types of caucuses and events that go on. So let me know if that like clears up exactly what Parley Pro is. Sorry about that. And oh, and I really encourage everyone to like use the chat box to answer questions because that's what I've like dedicated the majority of this to really. Um, what do you look for in a best delegate? So in a best delegate, as I said, I really look for someone who talks in specific terms and has very like nuanced ideas rather than someone who really talks in general terms. I also look for someone who like pushes debate forward. So I wouldn't suggest maybe sticking to a moderated caucus, for example, on one topic for more than 30 minutes. I really want to look for someone who uses the ideas like brought up in past moderated caucuses and just pushes them forward and uses it productively. Um, I also like really love when I see people working not only during like moderated caucuses and different speaking like events, but also during unmoderated caucuses because we will have people like walking around taking notes. So just seeing everyone working together and just not exactly being the leader of a block, but just being able to bring everyone together, compromise ideas, and just present it effectively in a resolution is what I'm looking for in like a delegate. Additionally, questions could be sent to this email. I'll say it slowly. UNODC at ilemonk-india.com. So if you have any questions that you don't want to ask in the chat prompt right now, you could easily send those to that email address. Okay, so another question. Suppose two countries have the same stance on the legalizations of drugs, but are not that close allies. Will it be okay for the two countries to ally? Um, so I would say if the countries have similar stances on these topics, but kind of don't work together in other contexts, I would still be okay with seeing some type of alliance between those two countries, because keep in mind that like these countries may work together in this committee but not work together in other committees. So I would still say it's okay for them to be allies in this case. The next question is, will crises be introduced in the committee, being a specialized one and not a crisis committee per se? So some of the committee chairs, as well as a few of like sec members, brought the idea like into the discussion of having crisis events for GAs. However, we haven't really like decided if we will do that in the future. So I would say right now there isn't really a huge chance of there being like a crisis similar to like a crisis committee. These are great questions, by the way. The next question is, what might be the committee strength? So what exactly do you mean by like the committee strength? Sorry. Okay. So I think the number of delegates for this committee will be between like 40 to 50. So it's not too large and also not too small. I think it's a good size. Okay. Yeah. I'm also taking questions by email or Facebook. So once again, if you, I'll give you two emails actually. So the first email is unodc at ilemonk-india.com, or you could email me personally. Um, my personal email is a.kamil9 at gmail.com, or you could reach out to me on Facebook. My name is Ahmed Kamil, Ahmed Kamil. So I'll also be reading a question right now from Facebook. So the first question is, what's Monk India's award policy? And generally, I think we follow the same award system that others do, where we have like best delegate, outstanding delegate, and then like verbal commendations or honorable mentions. So maybe we'd have like two or three like top tier prizes or awards, and then maybe another two or three just verbal commendations or honorable mentions. The next one is this is a delegate that's representing DPR Korea. In your personal opinion, is it more important that I focus on my stance or on forming a passable resolution? So this is a great question that not only applies to like North Korea but also applies to a lot of people. A lot of times I see people breaking character but doing great in terms of like forming resolutions and moving debate forward. Um, so I'd say it's not exactly an either or situation. You could do both, and doing both is what like distinguishes an amazing delegate from like a normal delegate, I'd say, because even though a lot of countries wouldn't be able to move the debate forward in terms of this, specifically DPR Korea and their like stance on um, both police brutality and like illicit drugs. So I'd say being able to like juggle your your country's like block position and their beliefs, in addition to like moving forward debate and being like an effective delegate is very important. Um, Another question is there any way I can pre-lobby my fellow council mates? Um, I'm not sure exactly what this question means, but I'm gonna assume that you just want to like reach out to them before you get to committee, and I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, but um, I would encourage like everyone just to like wait until we get there, and wait until like conference begins before you reach out to everyone, because it just adds to like a lot of the excitement and a lot of like the fun of committee. I think comes from meeting someone 1 second and within the next like 4 hours working with them to like pass something, pass a working paper, or working with them to like form a block. So I think a lot of like not only the fun parts of Model UN, but also the parts that show that you're more skilled are you just meeting these people, and it shows a lot that like initially meeting someone and then working with them so quickly and turning over a product in that time, I think is very impressive. Next is roughly how big a council am I expecting? And again, I think that's between 40 to 50. And final good question is like how many resolutions can be passed on each topic? And in my experience, I think after three or four resolutions, they kind of start to get like redundant, or they kind of start to get more time consuming than necessary. So I would be on the lower end of that. I would encourage people to have maybe three resolutions, and I really encourage people to like combine resolutions, work together, and not only because it's better in terms of having different information in every resolution, but also because you just have more time to present. You have more time to, I think, work on it, and it's just you have more people collaborating on one resolution than having maybe like five or six with much less like sponsors or signatories on each. So the next question is great. Also, will this MUN be following HMUN procedures or UN USA procedures? I'm not really familiar with like either of these terms. I know generally we'll be following like general parliamentary procedure. Specifically, I know the parliamentary procedure that um, Isle Monk, like our domestic high school conference follows, as well as Up Monk, our like domestic college conference. And that parliamentary procedure is like, I would say, pretty close to HMUN. I haven't heard much like discrepancies between these two. And yeah, the next question is the first day of conference merely going to be a lobbying session, or will full-fledged committee procedures start off on the first day, keeping in mind that there are only about 2 hours of committee session on that day? So also I think this is a great question and something that we'll have to like make a decision on, like depending on how committee's moving. I know 2 hours is kind of difficult because you have to like set the agenda, like have a speaker for, have a speaker against, and all these procedures would really like take up a lot of time. So it really depends on like the speed of committee and how like the delegates want to move it forward. Um, I would say in 2 hours we could maybe just get started the committee procedures, but I wouldn't say we'd immediately begin with committee procedures. Okay, so will you be looking forward to discussing both agendas in committee? Because only one agenda is discussed over a span of 3 days. So once again, we'll have to be able to like make a judgment based on the speed of committee. If I see people are like making a lot of progress, and it's plausible to like do both committee topics or both ideas of the agenda, then I think we absolutely should. However, if like you mentioned, one agenda topic is taking like a really long time, and I see that the like delegates are very into it and they're really like doing a good job of like bringing new ideas and working on it, then we could do like one agenda. However, it really all depends. So what do you expect from delegates of Afghanistan, Bolivia, Mexico, and Colombia? So of course those are like major players in terms of like drug cartels, but once again, like in my experience, in my Model UN experience, um, a- being a major player doesn't exactly guarantee you, I'd say, a significant like spot when it comes to debates and forming blocks. Yes, it gives you a lot more to talk about, and it gives you a lot more like room to work with. However, it all depends. Like essentially, looking at these countries, uh, like I consider like these countries very powerful in this topic. However, I take that into mind when like judging delegates. So, say like delegates from these countries, they're not going to be like benefited because they have like an easier time talking about this. It essentially comes down to like once again like moving debate forward, talking in specifics, mobilizing blocks, and not passing resolutions, but being like one of the main workers and contributors of resolutions. So the next question is, suppose if there's a logical fallacy in the speech of another delegate, how could we point it out? So if there's a logical fallacy versus, I'd say, um, like just incorrect information. If it's a logical fallacy, I wouldn't be as eager to point it out, but I would try to like um, sorry. So in terms of logical fallacy, I wouldn't be super eager to point it out, but I would maybe mention it if I were the next speaker. Like this didn't exactly make sense, but I really encourage more so not the calling out, but just like sticking more to your block position and also like presenting correct information. So I'm much more concerned about like being accurate in terms of information and alliances than like uh logically not like putting something together correctly. The next question is, what do you look for in a GSL? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that term, GSL. So, like, technically, it is a point of order to like point out like erroneous speeches or like factually or logically like problems. However, I really find that even with 50 to 60 delegates, if someone were to point out every single fallacy or like incorrect information presented by delegates, it would really take away from debate, I think. It just wouldn't be a good environment to be in, because it would discourage some of the shyer speakers from speaking based on like the idea that they might be called out if they say something wrong, even if it's like accidentally wrong. So while that is a point of order, I would only use it in like very important situations, such as like presenting working papers or presenting resolutions. I wouldn't do it in terms of like moderated caucuses or speakers list, unless you're the next speaker, in which case you could probably just mention it. I would also be careful not to specifically call them out because, as you guys know, there's also like a right to reply, which isn't used very often in my experience, but could like be played into a lot more if there's a point of order where you could just call out like logically or factually erroneous speeches. So the next question. Oh, sorry. Back to this question. What do you look for in a general speakers list? I apologize. Like we don't use a lot of these terms here. Like GSL, we just kind of say speakers list. Um, so for the general speakers list, I haven't, in my experience, had like that much flexibility with it. Usually, it's opened immediately after like you establish quorum, in like open debate. So the speakers list, I would look between like 45 to 1 minute speaking times, and simply I would have people volunteer. I'm not really looking for anything specifically for the general speakers list. Sorry. Oh, okay. So do you mean in terms of like yielding your time to other people or yielding your time to questions and for the general speakers list? Sorry, so the question was originally like what do you look for in a general speakers list, and the follow-up was like since the parliamentary procedures there seem to have like certain uh like specific things. Oh, do you mean generally parliamentary procedure, or do you mean specifically like for the speakers list? While I'm waiting on like a response or a follow up on this question, I got another one through Facebook. So since we are non ecosoc, we assume that our committee has unlimited funding, right? Um, so this is a very like debated topic when it comes to Model UN, like how specifically you should be funded or if you're staying within the powers of the committee. I would stress more so that you stay within the powers of the committee and not like infringe on like sovereignty or infringe on other committee duties. But in terms of funding, I would say that like you do have unlimited funding and you shouldn't take that into huge concern when like writing your resolutions. Um, okay, so I'll explain the basics of parliamentary procedure. Let me just pull up one of my sheets that I use to like manage all of this. Sorry, one second. Okay, so sorry. So the general flow of debate, it'll start with like establishing quorum or making sure that there's like the minimum number of delegates to run committee. Um, Essentially, this is just taking attendance or taking roll. So you'll be able to either say present, in which case you could abstain when it comes to voting, or you could say present and voting, in which case you can't abstain when it comes to major votes. Um, so next, um, we'll have a delegate like motion to either open debate and then open the speakers list. And um, like as you know, the speakers list will have a set time. I don't think it has a specific topic per se, and it's just generally like in my cases, I use the speakers list to fill voids in which like there's no specific caucus or specific procedure going on. So the speakers list will just be going back to whenever no motions for like moderated or unmoderated caucuses like pass, or just like when there's nothing specifically on the table. So after the motion to open the speakers list, maybe I'd like to see three or four speakers before a delegate motions to set the agenda or set the topic to one of the two topics. So then, um, after a delegate like motions to set the topic, um, the speaker list then opens to discuss the topic. So beforehand, you had somebody open the speakers list, and then right after that, you have someone like set the agenda or set the topic, and then this topic of the speakers list that you set earlier becomes whether or not like you would like to debate this topic. So you say like it is important to debate XYZ because of these reasons, and you like continue doing that. I'd say maybe another three or four speakers. Next, you have uh, next, like you would have a delegate motion to open like either moderated caucus, and when you're like speaking or motioning to open a caucus, I really would like people to sorry, um, have like a length of the caucus, a speaking time, and then like a specific purpose. And something that I see a lot is that like during these caucuses, people kind of go off topic, but I really encourage everyone to like stay on topic and continue talking about specifically that purpose. I I like suggest or consider between our first moderated caucus and our first unmoderated caucus, I would recommend maybe two or three moderated caucuses before like we open our first unmoderated caucus, because you really have to get an idea of all the block positions and a good idea of where people stand before you move into unmoderated caucuses and start like forming those blocks and working together. So that's what I would suggest. After unmoderated caucuses, I would just have like a mix of moderated and unmoderated caucuses depending on like what you guys feel you need. Maybe you feel you need to talk more, or maybe you feel you need to like actually just work intimately with people and start writing papers. So it all depends on how I and the delegates together see committee progressing on like the balance of unmoderated and moderated caucuses. So after a considerable amount of, I'd say, moderated and unmods, um, sorry, um, I expect like a good amount of work, a good working paper to be present. There's no set number of like caucuses that I would suggest for that, but I would it ultimately comes down to like the speed of committee because I've seen committees work on one topic the entire weekend while others finish two with maybe a session to like um, to save. But it all depends. So once a working paper is like typed up, it could be presented as a possible solution. And the way these like resolutions are presented or these working papers are presented are you motion to like present the working paper and you have like a 5 minute Q&A session. And then after um, I would I would say I would allow maybe 5 or 6 working papers. I would allow these working papers or the sponsors of these working papers to work together. You could add amendments. You could add like additional resolutions or additional working papers until you hit 6, of course. And after a while, you could like start presenting resolutions. And to like bring it back to earlier, I would suggest that these resolutions only amount to about 3 resolutions just because in terms of time, in terms of like repeating the same things, I think everything that the committee works on could be put into 3 resolutions. But once again, like we'll make a call once I see how the delegates feel about everything. And so you debate these resolutions, and of course you have like 2 speakers for, 2 speakers against. Those specific nuances um, are pretty hard to explain in this context, but I'll be 100% sure to like explain these things as we move into these type of procedures. And then next, after you continue debating the resolutions, you close debate, and the resolutions are put up to vote by the committee. And of course, by closing debate, you like lock the doors, everyone's seated, and there's like actually a specific number that we have to count in terms of votes because of the people who say like present versus present in voting. So I hope that like helped out with the general like flow of parliamentary procedure. Okay, so what do you look for in a delegate during unmods? Um, so during unmods, like I said before, I really want to see people like talking, networking, mobilizing people more than anything. Um, really, I just want to see people who like synthesize ideas, and I want to see people who could like even bring not far off but similar ideas and just mobilize support for like what they have. So just bringing everything into a compromise, and I think uh, I wouldn't say specifically writing the paper, but more so like doing productive work rather than just like talking. In the general speakers list, what do you think qualifies as a good speech? So for the speakers list, I think to begin with, most likely you should introduce your country. You should introduce like your position on the topic, and then you should also talk about like which point is more important to you. And then very important, you should like encourage people to reach out to you, send those notes and everything. So for the speakers list, I'd say it's more important at the beginning, and then later on, it kind of becomes a filler. So I'm not saying it's not important later on, but later on, the topics that will be touched on by the speakers list are ultimately up to the delegate who like is up there speaking. Um, Next question is, could we send in chits to you if a delegate has made a factual inaccuracy in his speech? So this seems to be like a pretty common question here. So I'll actually like take it into consideration, like how important the like logical and like factual like accuracies are, and um, I'll I'll say like as of now you could send in like maybe a note or a paper saying like this delegate um, made a factual inaccuracy, or yeah, like I would allow it now. However, if it becomes too like reoccurring during committee and is kind of overflowing the dais with notes, then I might have to cut it off. So it all depends once again. So as of now, I'd say like you could send in a note, but come committee session, if I were to get like 20 notes every time someone like says something incorrect, it kind of would distract me from like being able to like move committee forward and everything. Is it compulsory to submit a background guide? They mean position paper. Sorry. Um, I don't think it's compulsory. However, it's very helpful because it really like puts into perspective. Like, sorry, it puts into perspective like your country's beliefs, your goals, and it also really gets you to start thinking of what to do in committee. So while it's not compulsory, I would like recommend it. And also, a very good position paper will help you in terms of later on with awards and everything. So for the position papers, I I wouldn't recommend going past maybe five to 6 pages because after that point it just kind of gets convoluted. But a very good position paper could definitely help you later on. Okay, so can you inform us on who our assistant director is? Um, I'm not 100% sure that I could do that. Let me message someone really quickly. Actually, I'll just pull it up. Let me see. So, my AD is Beverly Lobo. She's head girl of the Dhirubhai Ambani International School. Okay. So, another question is, are witty analogies frowned upon? Um, of course not. Like, if you can make a good comparison and it like explains the problem at hand in a very good way, then absolutely like you could do that. They're not frowned upon. If anything, I love these types of comparisons. So like I encourage them more than anything. What is attire for delegates? Good question. Um, I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's Western business attire. So either like nice slacks or khakis or like long dressy pants of some sort, dress shoes, a suit and a tie, as well as a dress shirt. Um, if you're like confused as to like what to wear, I would just search like Western business attire. On which basis are points given to delegates? Um, so we try to keep it more under wraps. We don't like to specifically tell people how points are being like given because we just want you guys to like act natural. We want you guys to debate in a way that you would debate. And as long as you're being like productive, as long as you're being a great delegate, then like you'll gain those points, you know. So out of curiosity, how high is my level of patience? Um, so I'd say I'm pretty patient. Like I'm not sure exactly what this is referring to, but maybe it's referring to not wanting to hear like 5 or 6 resolutions say the same thing. But I'd say I'm very patient, and like really, this committee is about you guys more than me. I'm just like I'm just moderating this committee, and you guys are the main players. So I have to be patient because I'm watching you guys like do your best. I'm watching you guys really like work on these problems like to the best of your abilities. So I'm very patient, but however, like I just don't want to hear the same things being repeated. So yeah. What exactly do you look for in a position paper? Is it similar to the speakers list? And yeah, actually, like I didn't realize that type of parallel, but it should be pretty similar to the speakers list because you're like introducing your country's like thoughts, and you're also introducing like which problem is more important for you guys. So, in addition to that, so it is like very similar to the speakers list, I'd say. But in addition to that, I would also like start considering solutions or resolutions, not resolutions in entirety, but like specific operations or specific like objectives. And I would not go into detail in my position paper, but just like mention them and mention the general idea behind them. I would also like take into consideration for the position paper like questions a resolution must answer, and that I think that gives you like the upper hand when moving into debate later on. Are there a few more questions? I have to wrap up soon, sadly. It's been a really good webinar. Really excited to see everyone, by the way. So I got another Facebook question. So is yielding to the second degree allowed, and how strict are you on speaking time? Okay, so for speaking time, let's see. So I'm assuming yielding to a second degree is yielding for someone else to speak on behalf of you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Just like say something in the chat. But I would say, in terms, sorry. Hmm. So I would say yielding your time to someone else is perfectly okay on the speakers list. However, yielding your time to someone else on the moderated caucuses is not as flexible. So, in case you're thinking about yielding your time to someone during the moderated caucuses, you would have to send me a note. So yeah. So once again, yielding your time on a speakers list is perfectly fine, but yielding your time during moderated caucus, I would just have to know so that everything doesn't get too convoluted. So just send me a note if you're planning on like yielding your time to another speaker during moderated caucuses. Simply say like the next time you like choose me, I'm planning on like yielding. So let's see. So another question is, there won't be. Will there be opening speeches before the general speakers list? And I'm not exactly sure what that means. Like here in the states, we don't really have opening speeches. Like the opening speeches are what the speakers list is kind of for. So I'll be sure to like talk to the Monk India sec and see like what differences there are between parliamentary procedure like across, because you guys also have like different names for different like um, procedures. So I'll be sure to like make sure to brush up on that beforehand. Um, so could you explain the social events? They're a little vague as to what they entail. So I actually don't know most of what's like what's happening that weekend in terms of social events. I'm just like kind of focusing on committee sessions right now. But once again, if you have like questions about the social events, you could email me. I'll actually type in the email, and I'll be sure to like get back to you on that. Um, just give me a moment. Sorry, bear with me. Like I'm kind of sick. I woke up not feeling well. Um, okay, so how many countries are participating in this Model UN? As in, where are all the delegates from? So I actually don't have that information either. But once again, if you were to email me like and you're really curious, like I could find out. So what if we wanted? This will probably be the last question. I apologize. What if we wanted to get recognized in a moderated caucus, but unfortunately do not get recognized? Could we send in the points through chits? So do you mean like if you do not get to say what you wanted to say, could you send in what you wanted to say to the chair? And generally, I don't think I would like allow that because it would just end up with me ending up with maybe uh, 10 to 15 notes at the end of every moderated caucus. What you could do is like attempt to extend it, and because you like motioned in order to set up the new moderated caucus, you would be the first speaker. So I would suggest if you don't get recognized, because there are just too many people, not too many actually, a good amount, but if you don't get recognized, I would just say be the first to motion for that next moderated caucus so that you get to be that first speaker and you also get to set the topic. And let's see, it says that two of the common procedures here in India are H-month and Thai-month. So I'll be sure to like brush up on those, and I'll be sure to also speak with people who were either ADs or like former delegates of Almak India just so I could clear up any discrepancies and really set up committee to like the best of my ability as well as like cater to everyone's choices. So yeah, like I'm just here to make this like the best experience for you guys, and if there's any like specific thing I could do or specific like procedure I could get familiar with, just let me know, and I'll be sure to have it ready by in 2 weeks. Actually, it's getting pretty close. So yeah, just once again, email me with any questions, Facebook me with any questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in 2 weeks. It's going to be an absolutely great time. Thank you.